Last week on this channel, I made a countdown highlighting some of the most memorable LGBT-themed wrestling gimmicks of our generation, both good and bad. But this week on Wrestling with Regret, I decided to do something a little bit different. In honor of Pride Month, I wanted to shine a spotlight on some independent wrestlers who are part of the LGBT spectrum. Each person in this video has their own story and their own journey, and I wanted to get their perspective on what it's like to work in this crazy business. Let's introduce my panel for this video. First, from Oregon, a man who I used to train with back in the day. He's been involved in wrestling since the early 2000s after training at Dory Funk's camp in Florida, then with Buddy Rose and Ed Wiskowski in Oregon. Here we have Cameron Starr, not to be confused with the female wrestler of the same name. Next, from Las Vegas, after originally training to become a manager, he went on to become a wrestler and has been doing that for more than 6 years. He wrestles as the Sin City Kitty, Tommy PURR. Next, from Tennessee, he is a 20-year veteran. He got involved in wrestling at a very early age when his parents used to run shows in the area. After graduating high school, he left wrestling to enter the drag scene and has since returned to the business, combining both of his passions. This is DEMITRYA. And finally, from the Mid-Atlantic, she's been wrestling for about 9 years, the last half of which has taken place since her transition to female. She's currently on her second tour of Japan with a marvelous promotion and is the star of the sitcom The Switch, which is available on iTunes, NYLA Rose. So my first question is for Tommy, NYLA, and Cameron. As gay and transgender individuals, when you were first breaking into the wrestling business, which is traditionally a very macho sport, were you at all concerned?
Absolutely. So when I went to camp in Florida, now I came out when I was 16. So I went to camp with Funks at 18. So I had been out for a couple of years, but I didn't know how that was going to be perceived. So when I went to camp, I stayed in the closet because I didn't know how I was going to be received. Yeah, it was kind of interesting to just test the waters and see how everybody was going to be, and everybody was fine. It was a group full of good guys, but I was still concerned about that. So I never came out when I went to camp down in Florida.
We use the term weekend warriors in professional wrestling with some of the indie people. I kind of consider myself a weekend warrior as a female. Transitioning wasn't something for myself that I thought was ever going to be possible. So when I had my alone time, my private time, that's when I was really myself. Whenever I was out in the public, that's when I was kind of putting on that facade of who people thought I was.
My mom was really worried. My sisters were worried. A lot of people were worried. I wasn't. When I came out in high school, it was my sophomore year, and I was about, 14 going on 15. And when I came out, I actually became popular. So I never really experienced any issues with being an openly gay male. So when I started training to be a manager, I didn't think anything of it, And actually, there was no issues with the wrestlers that I worked with.
Now, DEMITRYA, as I said earlier in this video, you started wrestling in your teens, you took a sabbatical after high school, got into the drag show scene, you came back to the same territory, now identifying as androgynous. What was the reaction like in the locker room?
There was there still is a wrestler in this area who does a biker gimmick, and he lives his character. He's covered in tattoos, leather jacket, hair, and all that. And that was one of the ones who I was a little nervous about seeing again, working with. And he came up to me. We were doing a show in Morristown, Tennessee. I had on, the blue skin-tight cat suit with holes all up the sides and all of that. And he came up to me and was like, Matt, you look damn good. It was really unexpected how welcomed I was when I came back. And, there's a few promoters and a few wrestlers that don't agree with the lifestyle in general, or they don't agree with transgender, they don't agree with gay marriage and things like that. And they vocalize that on social media, but never has anybody said anything directly to me, in regards to me and how I live. It's kind of like they let it go.
And NYLA, for you, was it difficult to return to the locker room you've already been established in after your transition?
Absolutely. It actually took me a very long time to come back, and a main part of that is I genuinely didn't know if there was even a place for me in this business. I didn't know if I would be welcomed. I didn't know if my continued passion for every aspect of the business would be, reciprocated. Thankfully, a little bit of research online, I discovered, I'm not sure if you're familiar, a young woman by the name of Mariah Moreno. She is openly trans. I discovered her, and she kind of really inspired me that, maybe there is a place for me here. This largely and wholeheartedly has been the most welcoming aspect of my life as far as who I am now.
Overall, have any of you felt like you've been treated differently by your peers in wrestling because of your sexuality?
They've always welcomed me. They haven't treated me any different. I mean, they flirt with me, for fun, but no one's ever treated me bad. I wasn't worried. Any worry that I had came from everyone being concerned that I would get treated differently, so.
A lot of guys in the Northwest, when I broke in, maybe hadn't been around a lot of gay or lesbian folks before. So a lot of guys that I wrestled when I first broke in, when I came back to Portland, did take liberties on me in the ring, but I think it was a culmination of being gay. I'm also a rookie, and at this point I'm also still only 18. So I don't think it was only being gay, but I think it was a culmination of all of those things put together. But I think being gay definitely, like they're testing the new kid, you know what I mean, to see if I'm going to quit.
Well, it sounds like for the most part, the bulk of your wrestling colleagues are open-minded, but on the other side of the barricade, have any of you guys had any scary or otherwise negative experiences with fans?
There has not, knock on wood, find some wood behind me. Knock on wood, there has not been any instances yet, but I'm not naive in the sense that, like, just because nothing's happened, I think, oh, I'm good, nothing's ever going to happen. That's sadly a very, very real possibility for me, and it's kind of constantly always in the back of my mind.
The issues mainly seem to come from women and not from men, which is not what you would expect. Because I'm gay, they think that they can grab onto me. They think that they can. I kind of, being a gay male wrestler and dealing with overly touchy females, I kind of get a sense of where the women in wrestling are coming from, and they have to deal with that with male fans. So it's very, you get those women who go, oh, I just love my gays, and they treat us like accessories.
The fans that came in that didn't know me, they were so outnumbered by the fans that did and the fans that supported me that I never felt threatened. Most of the times that I felt threatened was before I started the DEMITRYA character.
Thankfully, in wrestling, I didn't have too many of those, but there were a couple times where, people tried to push me around and pick a few fights with me, and but thankfully that was more of the exception than the rule.
There was one incident with a male fan who, when I was wrestling in Utah for UCW 0, very religiously, that was my home promotion even though I didn't live there, and he would follow me on social media and other people's social medias and talk about how I was vulgar and not good for children and how he was threatening to sue me for lewd acts. And I had warned the company that he was trouble, but they didn't care because he paid for all those VIP tickets, and one thing led to another, and he said, you're not kid friendly, and I just snapped, and all I said, literally, this is all I said, was #hire a sitter, and he went completely batshit crazy, and as a result, the promoter and the booker went off on me, and I realized the double standard between myself and the other male wrestlers who weren't gay. And it sucked. It really, really sucked because this fan called me faggot when I would get thrown out of the ring, and I was a good guy. Now, had I been a heel, I would have brushed off the whole faggot thing because I would have been like, okay, all right, you hate my guts, I'm a bad guy, I'll take it, whatever. But this dude was all over Instagram and social media, and when you threaten to sue me, I kind of don't take that lightly.
For the most part, I do kind of go into every situation. Even though I'm thinking things and I have to worry about my safety, I am always trying to be the most positive I can be about it. today's going to be a good day. We're going to have a great show.
So Nyla, I know it can be hard to be transgendered in the regular world. So being transgendered in professional wrestling, I imagine, would have its own set of complications. Talk to me about your experiences as a trans woman in professional wrestling, along with the experiences of any other trans wrestlers you might know.
It's a little bit difficult. You know, it's professional wrestling in its birth and its heyday, if you will, however you want to word that. It is a boys' sport. You know, men started it and everything. Women saw that and said, "Hey, that's awesome. We can do that too," and they knocked it out of the park. So women definitely had to work twice as hard to get the same respect that men were just kind of like given. So being a trans wrestler, now we have to work twice as hard to not only show the world that we can hang, that we are women, but we can do the wrestling as well. Let's be real, you know, we are going to face certain difficulties, certain discriminations, and it has happened. It's happened to me. I've been very fortunate in the regards that no one's outright done it to my face. For other trans wrestlers that I know, a lot of them are going through that same first step that I went through. Is this a place for me? Am I going to be welcomed? How is the world going to receive me? But I think wholeheartedly, of all the women that I know, most are doing pretty well for themselves wherever they are in their career.
And I know you wrestle intergender matches occasionally, but you primarily wrestle women. So have you gotten any flack from people saying, oh, you shouldn't be allowed to wrestle women because you used to be a man?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. That happens to everybody. A good buddy of mine, Fallon Fox, MMA fighter, you know, she faced that as well. It's really hilarious when I get it, because I'm like, well, why not though? Even if you do see that as an advantage, which it is not, but even if it was an advantage, there are intergender matches between cisgendered females and cisgendered males. So how in the world of professional wrestling is this at all ever an issue?
Okay, let's open this back up to the rest of the panel now. As I've said before on this show, historically, there have been lots of gimmicks in wrestling of a homosexual nature. They've been labeled flamboyant or androgynous or eccentric, but a lot of the times, like 99% of the time, these characters are played by straight individuals. As people who are actually part of the LGBT spectrum, how does it make you feel when you see these kinds of gimmicks?
I think it used to bother me because I was never the big feminine, flamboyant persona, because that's just not who I am. And I never wanted to exploit that. I just wanted to be known as a really good wrestler first, and not my gimmick first. When I see guys do it now, if they can pull that off and be successful, as a gay man, now that I'm a little bit older, that does not bother me as much as it used to.
But I know a lot of gay wrestlers that I'm friends with are not particularly fond of basically straight workers coming in on our turf. But in the same token, I don't believe that all gay wrestlers should portray themselves as flamboyant or flaming queer homosexuals. Sometimes I feel like it's a little cheap, almost like they have nothing better. They had no better ideas to go with, you know? But I try not to be offended. It's wrestling. Everything's pretty much up for grabs.
Professional wrestling, part of it is characters. I feel that if it's done in a tasteful and respectful manner, I'm okay with it, especially if it's entertaining and it gets over.
It's just like with comedy. Like a comedian will make fun of a certain situation, or it's like some wrestlers do characters that you know is not who they are. And it's acting, in a sense. They're doing what they can to get a reaction from the crowd. As long as there's no like gay bashing or trans bashing, then I'm cool with it. Do you and make your money.
Now, back in 2013, Darren Young became the first active WWE wrestler to come out as gay. How did you guys react to that news?
Oh, I was like super elated, and then immediately after that, extremely terrified. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, have you seen the meme with the guy like, oh no, baby, what is you doing? That was the thought in my head. Like, I'm like super happy, super proud that you're comfortable enough to do that. But dude, you're like a black gay guy in this macho business. you're not going to have a job next week. So when WWE backed him and was like, yeah, so, and then they got on the no hate campaign, I was like, oh my God.
I thought it was fantastic. I think at that time, and still today, I think WWE was pretty progressive for the most part. And the fact that they allowed him to stay on that stage and be forthcoming with that, I thought that was amazing. I thought it was fantastic.
I was a little surprised that it took as long as it did for a wrestler to come out publicly like that. Before that, there was Orlando Jordan, who was bisexual or is bisexual, and then it was kind of a swept under the rug thing with Pat Patterson. But I was happy for Darren that he felt comfortable enough to be himself. But I was surprised that it took so long.
Like at that time, WWE was spring cleaning and like they were releasing people, and so he coincidentally came out around the same time, and firing an openly gay black wrestler. That's kind of, you don't want to do that and get bad publicity, So I think it was strategic. I think it was smart. I would have done the same thing. I watched his interview on Ellen, and I think he's a superbly sweet person and very well spoken. So it's not a personal attack on him. I just felt like the timing was a little suspect.
Okay, final question now. What is the biggest piece of advice you would give to someone on the LGBTQ spectrum who wants to break into professional wrestling but is concerned about doing so?
My advice to people, period, is try not to give a shit what people think about you. I mean, respect your veterans, shake everyone's hand, listen to everyone's critiques, listen to advice even if it's unsolicited. But try not to let internet comments, rumors about the locker room, try not to let that get to you. My other advice to anyone in wrestling and anyone who wants to break into the business, take an acting class, learn some promos, try and be different from everyone else, and just listen, basically.
The thing about wrestling and having a different lifestyle, be it you're gay or whatever, is stay true to yourself, but just don't shove your opinions in somebody else's face. Don't shove your lifestyle in somebody else's face.
The advice that I would give is to be vigilant, to protect yourself, not to hide it, and be prepared to work twice as hard just to be accepted into what we know as the fraternity.
It is scary. It's going to be scary, but when you push the envelope, if you're not uncomfortable, you're not growing. So take a minute, recognize that fear, but don't let that fear control you. Just recognize it, put it aside, and then take that leap. Do your research. There are other LGBT wrestlers out there. There are other LGBT wrestlers making a living doing this. You don't have to be a gay wrestler. Just because you're a gay guy, you don't have to be a gay wrestler. Just because you're a lesbian woman, you don't have to be a lesbian wrestler. Like, those two aren't mutually exclusive. I'm very proud of my community. I'm very proud of who I am. So I don't shy away from it. But being trans is not a part of my Nyla Rose character. So don't be afraid. There is a place for you in professional wrestling.
Well, that'll do it. This has been a great, enlightening conversation. I want to thank Cameron Starr, Tommy PURR, DEMITRYA, and Nyla Rose for all taking part in this week's video. It was great having them on. If you want to learn more about these folks, I have all their pertinent social media accounts listed in the description. Be sure to thumbs up this video if you like it, comment below, subscribe to Wrestling with Regret, and buy the t-shirts at ProWrestlingTees.com. I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.